Yes, that's good, right there it is. Hi. Oh, I kept the first for another day, but knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever go back. Out of all the roads I've taken in my life, the road that I wish I could have left not taken was the road of accompanying my partner through the horrible time of mental illness. I had already been with Peter for about 12 years. Pete had an AIDS diagnosis. And through those years, he had his garden variety of opportunistic infections, pneumonia, neuropathy, thrush. Then he got walloped with a really bad one. Pete developed toxoplasmosis. And what that is a bacterial infection of the brain that leaves scars and lesions in all different regions of the brain. That probably was the onset of his mental health issues. That combined with a really tough upbringing. He was born and raised in the deep South in Selma, Alabama, and at the age of 17 came out to his family and was promptly kicked out of the house. So he had to deal with all of that as well. The 1-2 punch did him in, and he started going deeper and deeper into clinical depressions, and bipolar was his diagnosis. He had stays in hospitals of 1 or 2 days. For me, it was always the same thing. He'd go in, and just as soon as the insurance ran out, that's when the doctors declared him sane again. And he'd come out again. He had a couple of incidents where he tried to do harm to himself, and he'd spend a little bit longer, a week or 2 weeks in, but again, as soon as the insurance ran out, he was sane and ready to go. It wasn't for lack of trying that he kept going in. He kept telling me, I gotta beat this thing, I gotta beat this thing. He did everything. He went through electroconvulsive therapy. He went through transcranial magnetic stimulation, that was the name of it. He went through lithium treatments. He went through talk therapy. He went through exercise therapy. He just could not get rid of this thing. But we were determined. We wanted to get through this together. We were really, really sure we could do it, and we were really committed to each other. And that's when I learned the other ugly definition of being committed. February of 2012, Pete was on his way to see a psychiatrist, and he insisted on going on his own. I wasn't too sure, but I said, you know something? He said he could do it. He went to the psychiatrist. He did not come back. I was frantic. He was gone for the entire night. I didn't know what to do. Went to the police. I went to all his friends. Nothing. At 6 the next morning, I get this garbled phone call where he's just coming to, and he must have pushed the speed dial button, and I finally found out from him that he was in a motel in Jersey City. I drove right there. I asked, is there somebody by the name of Peter and his last name there? And they said, yes, he's there. He paid in cash. That's how I knew I couldn't trace him. I went up, and there were just 3 empty bottles of aspirin, all his empty bottles of psychotropic medicine, and all his empty HIV meds bottles. So he had ingested them all. I picked him up, carried him to the car, and tore ass right into the hospital, to the emergency room. He goes in, and I'm waiting. And the doctors come out and give me the same, what I thought was going to be the same news that I always got. He is alive, he's going to recuperate, and he's spending a day or 2 with us. But what I heard this time was, he's alive, he's going to recuperate, and 3 physicians have petitioned a judge who has agreed to commit him to the Meadowview State Psychiatric Facility in Secaucus, New Jersey. There was no way I could get him out of that now. And they said, we're taking him this afternoon there, go home, get his stuff, you could visit him tonight when he's coming to after we pump his stomach. So I rush home, and I knew the drill. Pack up a backpack of clothes, none of which had strings in them, shoes with no shoelaces, nothing sharp, no razors, and only printed material that was going to be approved. So I'm running out the door to go to the Secaucus Meadowview State Hospital, and I went to the bookcase and I just grabbed the Norton Anthology of Poetry and I threw it in his bag, and I go there, and the wait started. I go through the 2 doors, sets of doors, I get the pat down, they check everything. I go to his hospital bed in the examination room, and he's just coming to, and he opens his eyes and he looks at me and he says the same thing he always did. I fucked up again. and I'm really sorry. I held his hand, and then he opened his eyes a little bit more. He said, where am I? I said, you've been committed. You are in the Secaucus State Psychiatric Hospital. And he had this smirk and this glint in his eyes, and then he chuckled a bit. And I was seething. And I said, what the fuck are you laughing about? And he said, I'm sorry, Richard, it's just so crazy. Being insane in Secaucus, New Jersey, it's just a bit too redundant for me. He got me to laugh a little bit. He always had that droll, dry sense of humor, even in the midst of his depression. But I was still angry as could be. We go to the waiting room. I'm sitting, he's still in the bed or in a wheelchair, and I didn't even want to talk. We spent the whole hour not saying a word. The second hour comes, I finally said to him, here, let me read you a poem. And I opened the book and I read him a poem. Nothing. I said, you read me one. I gave him my glasses because he couldn't have any. He read a poem to me. That began the tradition of going into that hospital room every night, having a visit, and then reading one poem to each other every night. We never really got into what the poems were about. The most we ever got into that was saying something like, I really like that poem. Or after a while saying, I just don't get that one at all. But we kept up that tradition. Was it helping? I don't know. There's a great poet that I read now, and he has this great line, how it was never or always the same, the moment between mastery and mess. So was I mastering things? Was I making a mess of things? I don't know. But there was this quietness that would come over us when we read poetry one to the other. And we always ended our visits that way, and we'd look around, and there was a quietness that came across that entire psych ward of people just looking at us. And that went on for 3, 4, 5 months. And we always had this oasis. 4th of July, 2012, Pete finally got released from the hospital. He got to come home. And on the 2nd of August, only less than a month after that, Pete made the decision to take his life and end it. I don't want this story to be about Pete's suicide. I want it to be about this sense that we can find refuge and we can find hope, and that there's a way that we can touch something bigger than us. I want it to be more about hope than despair. There's another great poet I read, and he has this line, as long as the earth continues its stony breathing, I will breathe. So I keep breathing. And I know there's always hope. There's always a way out. There's always poetry. Thank you.